Hey guys. So, I felt the need to speak again today. I hope y'all are all having a good week. I'm sending my love and my blessings to everyone watching and to everyone who subscribes and or likes or whatever. I mean, any type of support is very much appreciated, and I love you all. Big hugs and love. So, what I wanted to talk about today is Dr. Wayne Dyer was the one that initiated my awakening back when my son was born. And so today, I always randomly pull a book from my bookshelf, and I don't even think about it. I just like randomly just pull something. It doesn't have to be Dr. Dyer. It can be any author that inspires me. And a lot of my books are very spiritual in orientation. So I just pick something, and then I I flip to a page, and then I read what it says, and then I know that it's the message that I needed to hear. And so that's obviously what I did today. And I fell upon the first chapter. So I wanted to read some of the quotes from the first chapter. It's called Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling. And I've read it a couple of times, and I've highlighted some stuff. And so I wanted to expand upon some of the highlighted stuff, and then also to expand upon some of my own notes. So strap in. This might not be a short video. So the first chapter is called Living Your Life in Spirit. Story time. So he goes with a quote to begin his first chapter. When you are inspired, dormant forces, faculties, and talents become alive, and you discover yourself to be a greater... Let me back up here. So, yes, I told you about the book, but what I forgot to tell you the main point of the message, which I always put it in the description box anyway. But what my point of the message is that a lot of times we do things out of obligation and or out of feeling, because of religious reasons or because of familial obligations or whatever it is. We feel like we have to do stuff, and also because of the conditioning system that we've been placed in by society, we feel like we have to definitely through, if like we work for a company or I mean, probably most jobs, I would assume we feel like we have obligations or whatever, and we're trained into thinking that we have to do these things, we have to do all these things. And when it comes down to it, when you start spiritually awakening, one of the things you realize is that you don't have to feed into the system. You don't have to any longer be shut down, like obligated to a certain way of doing things. You can follow your heart more. You can be who you are. You can be inspired instead of motivated or following the ego's system of doing things because you think it's going to help you to gain something. Living from it's living from the heart, living from in spirit, inspired. So there we go. That's the main point of this video. But I wanted to read from the book. I had to backtrack there because I realized I didn't really, specify what the video was about. Anyway, so living your life in spirit. There's a quote that begins, when you are inspired, dormant forces, faculties, and talents become alive, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. And I think it's pronounced Patanjali. Patanjali. You can look up the quote. Patanjali. Patangali. Okay. So the first quote that I wanted to quote is the very beginning of the chapter. There's a voice in the universe entreating us to remember our purpose, our reason for being here now in this world of impermanence. The voice whispers, shouts, and sings to us that this experience of being in form in space and time has meaning. We're all here for a reason, guys. We're all here for a reason. We aren't here by accident, you know? Okay, so the next one I wanted to jump to, and I'm just jumping through the chapter. It's the first chapter of the book. I'm just jumping through. I have it on Audible too, so I've been listening to it a little bit on and off throughout the past couple of days. I think of the word inspiration as meaning being in spirit. When we're in spirit, we're inspired. And when we're inspired, it's because we're back in spirit, fully awake to the spirit within us. Being inspired is an experience of joy. We feel completely connected to our source and totally on purpose. Our creative forces flow, and we bring exceptionally high energy to our daily life. We're not judging others or ourselves. We're uncritical and unbothered by behaviors or attitudes that in uninspired moments are frustrating. Our hearts sing in appreciation for every breath, and we're tolerant, joyful, and loving. I love that. Being in spirit isn't necessarily restricted to work we do or the activities of our daily life. We can be inspired and at the same time be unsure of what vocation to pursue or what activities we want to schedule. Inspiration is a simple recognition of spirit within ourselves, that we are directly connected to spirit, which means that the inspiration flows when we consciously connect with our higher selves, with our spirit. As we move more deeply into spirit, we cease to be guided by ego demands of others or ourselves. We surrender to the always present force that urges us to be in this blissful state of inspiration. And then he goes on to say his own personal experience. When I'm in spirit, I have a feeling of contentment. But more than this, I experience joy. I'm able to receive the vibrational energies of my source. Call them voices, messages, silent reminders, invisible suggestions, or what have you. But they're vibrations of energy that I'm able to align with as I get myself out of the way. Ego. Get the ego out of the way, connect with spirit. That's when things come through. At least that's what I've been learning in my own life. And he's obviously a writer. So he says, when I sit down to write, my desire is to invite spirit to express through me, and I encourage ideas to flow freely. To suspend the ego and enter a space where I want to share who I am. That unique signature that we all carry. We are all meant to express ourselves. Our unique, not just personalities, but our unique energetic signature, which is the soul. It's not the body personality, it's the soul energy that we bring to the world and that impacts the people in our lives and brings light to the world, in other words. So to suspend ego and enter a space where I want to share who I am and what I have in a completely unlimited fashion. So that's what I wanted to share from the book. And again, it's Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling. And of course, I'm not promoting anything for money. I Dr. Wayne, Dr. Dyer has changed my life completely. I still love him to death. He's in spirit now, but I know that he's with me, and I really, really love his work. So I wanted to expand on my own notes as I was reading. So I think I'm going to call this video Inspired Action versus Forced Obligatory Action. So the first note that I wrote down is there is a natural joy in... So the way that you determine whether you are in aligned action or you are in obligatory action, and I think you probably already know the answer to this, because there's an automatic internal guidance system that tells you yes or no right away. Like, you automatically know what if you want to do this thing or you don't want to do this thing. And society teaches us that we have an obligation to do these things that we don't want to do. And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be anything, you know. It could be even as big as like a job, or, you know, getting married, or getting a not getting a divorce, or and there's so many factors that go into this concept, but there is a natural joy when you think of something that you want to do, that you burn with desire for. It's a natural thing, and it's leading you towards what you're meant for, you know, what you're meant to experience. So that's the first concept. The second concept is it's natural and desirable. That kind of flows into the first concept. Okay, so the third concept is that you are connected to God and spirit. So there's a very different energy from being connected with your ego and then being connected with God and spirit. When you're connected with God and spirit, you are much more at peace. You feel aligned with your choices. You feel aligned with your thought patterns. You feel aligned with your emotions. When you are in ego, there's a constriction there. There's like a tightness there. And whether or not we realize that, the ego is all about itself. You know, the ego is all about serving the self. And not to say that, I mean, in my past videos, I've talked about how self-love is number one. So don't get that misunderstood. Self-love is number one. So then, but also, but the ego, when it comes into play, it's when you're unconscious. That's when you like backstab someone, or you talk about someone behind their back, or you know, when you go unconscious. Like, the ego it's very sneaky, the way the ego works in your brain. So it's very important to understand how the ego works versus how spirit works. And that's why it's so important to have a spiritual practice and to have a connection with spirit at all times, or at least as much as you can. We all have bad days, you know. The first part of my day actually was kind of not rough, but just internally a little bit rough. I have days like that because, you know, we're all human, first of all, and then second of all, I believe I'm going through the ascension process. And if you're not familiar with that term, look it up. It's a very common term. A lot of people know about it, and it's a spiritual process that it's very evolutionary for not just the body, but more importantly, the spirit, and for Mother Earth and all of that. So just look it up if you're not familiar with it. You trust and you flow. You know, you trust and you flow. When you're in I am getting so good at this throughout I feel it, at least. I'm gonna brag just a tiny bit. I feel like I'm getting so good about this, is that yes, I do still have to stick to some kind of schedule because Chase has soccer stuff and, you know, all that, you know, of course I still have some kind of schedule, but I I try to always stick in my mind to the idea that I can flow with my inspiration throughout the day to be inspired into what I want to do in that moment. Sometimes it's to cook a really nourishing meal, not just pick something out of the fridge, or it's to clean a certain part of the house, or it's to um, do something really fun with Chase, take him out, or do something even in the house, like do something with him. It just depends on the day, but it really just is a spur of the moment kind of thing. And spirit is very intelligent, and we're connected to spirit. And so when we are in the flow, spirit guides us along the path every minute of every hour. And so we are constantly being guided in the way that we should experience this incarnation. And so that really puts the pressure off of you a lot in a lot of ways. And I feel like this is a large theme of this video, is that when you start trusting more and you start listening to that knowing within you, you are able to release a lot of that tension and the pressure that the ego places on you. You have to be here a certain time. You have to look this way. You have to present yourself this way to people. You have to be on all the time. You have to do this and that and this and that to people please, like you have to make this amount of money. You have to have this certain kind of house. You have to have this certain kind of car. All of this stuff is just, it starts to fall away. As you spiritually awaken, it starts to fall away completely. And so living in inspiration, in spirit, is learning how to tap into your intuition, learning how to stay aligned with spirit, learning how to listen to your own internal guidance system. And so, yeah, I think accomplishment, willpower versus being guided. Yeah, and okay, so the last point, I put accomplishments, willpower versus being guided. So accomplishments is like where you feel like that's where all of your identity comes from, and that of course it feels good to accomplish things, of course, but a lot of times it comes from the ego aspect, where what's the force behind why you're doing that? Is it because you want approval? Is it because you want fame? Is it because you want to feel good enough? Is it because you want a lot more money? I mean, whatever it is, and none of that is inherently bad. It's just that it's placing the value of your experience of life in the not wrong things, but the things that aren't going to serve you in the long run. So when it comes to being inspired, when you start connecting more with your higher self, with your spirit, you start realizing that a lot of those accomplishment things didn't really matter in the first place. And even if they did, they taught you a lesson, and whether good or bad, and you come out stronger for it. But living in inspiration is very much about learning how to come out of that ego mentality. Going from ego-based mentality to, again, as I've said several times in this video, staying connected with your higher self, staying connected with the voice, following the voice of inspiration, following that voice in that internal guidance system that is telling you where to go at all times. And it will lead you to the truth. It will lead you to your higher path. It will lead you to love. It will lead you away from fear. It will lead you away from vanity. It will lead you away from all of the vices of, the the more negative polarity energies up into the higher realms of love and peace and joy and all those things that we all crave, because that's who we really are inside anyway. We're a part of God. So yeah, that was it for my notes. I hope this video helped you guys. I'm up to 20 minutes now. Wow. Reach out to me if you want to talk with me. Rachel Kadana 1111 at gmail.com. I'm always here to talk. I really love connecting with you guys. Like it really is such a joy, and I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't love it to death. I mean, I love sending you guys messages and helping humanity rise, and diminishing the darkness, and spreading the light. We all have darkness within us, of course. There's the polarity that we live with being human beings. So that's not what I'm saying at all, but we all deal with our darkness. But what I'm trying to say is we're light workers at the end of the day. And even if we have our shadow side, we are light beings, and we wouldn't be doing this work. And by this work, I don't mean just what I'm doing. I'm saying like the ways in which all of you do your work. It all matters, being kind to someone, as you go to work, and you grab your coffee, or, forgiving your coworkers or your boss for something they said or did, your spouse, or, being as good of a parent as you can be. I mean, all of that stuff counts, and also following your passions, honoring your passions, honoring your heart, honoring who you are as a beautiful light worker soul. So I encourage all of you to stay the course, to, continue to be the person that you're meant to be, and just focus on going up, going up, going up. Spreading my light, love, and blessings to all of you. Namaste.